Hello, college composition. So this week we are looking at a few different articles. The first one is called Supporting Claims. Now, we went over ethos, pathos, and logos a little bit last week. I'll touch on those here in a second. This just gives a basic overview of each one. Ethos is credibility. Pathos is going to be some sort of an emotional appeal, and logos is a logical appeal, right? And we'll get into more detail in a moment. Um, but one of the things that this particular reading really wants to point out is this idea of the STAR methodology when looking at appeals to logos or logic. And so STAR, quite simply breaking it down, and you can really look at any kind of source or text using or claim information using this STAR methodology. The first part is sufficiency. So um, essentially, is there enough evidence to support whatever claim that a creator of a text is putting out there, right? Um, and if you don't feel there's enough evidence, you could say it's lacking sufficiency in your rhetorical analysis. Typicality is whatever evidence they're providing. Is it typical or is it an extreme? That's how I always look at that one. So are they using an extreme example at one end of the spectrum or the other, which would not be typical, which we do see a lot of in our culture. A lot of people try to say, here's one extreme example, therefore it represents everything. When really it's an extreme example instead of what is typical evidence. Accuracy goes back to you're looking at kairos or timeliness of the evidence. Are the facts true? Are they not true? Is it up to date? So you're just looking at the information itself in the evidence and looking to see if it's accurate or not accurate or out of date. And of course, the last one is relevance, right? Is the evidence relevant to the claim or the information being presented, or is it kind of make you pause and say, well, wait a minute, I'm not really seeing how these things are connected, how this evidence helps support that claim or prove that claim. And so you can really look at the STAR methodology for any bit of evidence that you have, or if you're rhetorically analyzing a piece, you can look at all of these in terms of claims. Now, the second reading, this is where it's getting a little bit more specific into ethos, pathos, and logos. And of course, the STAR criteria is an aspect. They present it in the sense of logos, logical appeal. So with logos, though, it is an appeal to logic, and here again they're bringing up the STAR criteria. But a lot of times when you look at logos and how people try to manipulate an audience using logos or logical appeals through the use of numbers, statistics, quotes from people that have good ethos or good credibility, right? And I always try to tell people, anybody that's taken a college level statistics class learns pretty quick that statistics can create whatever truth you want them to. So be really, really careful whenever you see statistics or numbers being used to critically analyze those, right? Because they are designed to have a manipulative appeal to your logos, right? So for instance, if you are reading a really intriguing article and it says, since 1996, we've seen this great correlation or this great a great number of whatever, right? To prove their claim. A lot of people don't do this, but I would encourage you to think, well, why 1996, right? Like, why didn't you pick like a rounded off number like 2000 or 1990? And even at that point, why then, right? Why did they pick the starting point for their statistic that they did, right? So to think about things of that nature. Why did they measure this in their statistics and not this, right? Which variable did they leave out? So statistics can create whatever truth you want them to, right? So be really careful when you run into statistics and numbers. Appeal to pathos, of course, is an emotional appeal. And in your rhetorical analysis, there's a wide variety of ways that a creator of a text can appeal to pathos. Of course, one of them is through word choice, right? And there's this idea of, they call them weasel words inside of the marketing and advertising industry. They are words that have no substance. They're hollow, a weasel word. And advertisers use them all the time in order to sell products. So, for instance, the words new and improved. We see that all over products, right? Where they say new and improved. And they may just, the product might actually be the same, but they might have lowered or changed the box design or something, right? One of the ideas that comes to mind is Pop-Tarts, right? They come out with this new and improved campaign with Pop-Tarts a few years back, and all they did was the little cardboard flaps that you flip over to close the box, they just made them a quarter of an inch less, and they could slap new and improved on there, and it was a selling gimmick, right? The actual product didn't change. And so you see other ones where people say like magic or helps, right? When they say helps you look younger. Well, how does it help you look younger? And really, what does younger look like, right? That's such a subjective idea, right? So if somebody uses their product and says, well, hey, your lotion did not make me look 10 years younger, the company's going to say, oh, well, we think it made you look 10 years younger, right? So word choice is a way for advertisers or creators to manipulate an audience. So I always say it in this way. Every single word you see when you're rhetorically analyzing something, it's in there for a reason. Every single word. And you can rhetorically analyze that for deeper meaning. Of course, other pathos strategies that people use to manipulate personal examples or stories. Obviously, those create an emotional appeal, and they're designed to create an emotional appeal through the use of stories. And then the last thing that I would touch on is, especially if you're rhetorically analyzing anything, is there a visual component to it? Obviously, certain images are designed to make us feel one way or another. You could even go into a psychological route with that. There's certain colors that are supposed to make us feel one way or another. Like in theory, red is designed to make us feel more hungry. Yellow is supposed to make us feel happy. Like I said, is there validity in that or not? I don't know, but studies in psychology say there are. And so that's why you have colors like red and yellow in something like McDonald's, right? So you can go visual appeal in so many different ways, whether it's a picture, whether it's just color pattern or just other kinds of patterns, right? There's all kinds of different visual aesthetic appeal that can go into creating emotion. And then the ethos, we kind of went into ethos last week a little bit, and kind of how to appeal to ethos. And that's going to be more of like your inherent versus invented. You might want to go back and watch last week's video if you want a little bit more in depth on each of these, but inherent versus invented ethos, common ground as a tactic, goodwill, authority, identity, right? So those are different ways to appeal to ethos or to build credibility. And then the last kind of thing I want to touch on in this week's video that we had a reading on, which was inductive and deductive reasoning. Now, these are ways in which a creator tries to appeal to logos, right? Or this, and a lot of times, this is how our own logic works in our brains, right? We either come to a conclusion via inductive or deductive reasoning. And so, and if you read this article, it might seem a little bit confusing, like, well, wait a minute. they're kind of the same, but I'm getting that they're a little bit different. And really, it's just the process. So if there's a conclusion, right, that you're trying to get to, there's an end conclusion. You're either trying to get to the conclusion or you're starting with the conclusion. That's the only difference here. So if you're trying to reach a conclusion, that's inductive reasoning. You're taking examples or evidence that you are finding in the world around you that then shape and create whatever conclusion or claim you have. Versus deductive reasoning is where there's already a conclusion, but you're trying to understand, well, how did somebody get to that conclusion? And then you start looking for pieces and you're kind of working backwards to figure out, okay, what were all the reasons that built into this conclusion? Face it versus building a conclusion off of all these different reasons. So that's essentially inductive and deductive reasoning in a nutshell. Of course, both have their flaws, certainly, and both have their biases, which is what I would caution against. Right now, these are really good tools for rhetorical analysis in the way in which a creator has come up with or frames their claim, right? Are they presenting a bunch of things first and then coming to a conclusion? Or are they like, here's my conclusion, this is how I got there, right? And so these are good ways or good things to keep in mind when you are rhetorically analyzing somebody else's claim. As far as in your personal lives, these, again, pitfalls, biases go into both types of reasoning, and it's I would always encourage you to have a critical and open mind about anything, any claim or conclusion that you're coming to, whether that's through inductive or deductive reasoning. Well, until next week, college composition, stay good.